and thank you all for coming, taking a day out of your beautiful summer to come and hear this talk. Now, I'd like to, I forget, I don't have my contact on right now so I'm going to be taking off and putting back on those glasses all day today, so I hope I don't drive anybody crazy. But I like to start out with something funny. So there was this, we're going to call him an inspirational speaker, okay? And he got this great opportunity, just like I got today, to come and share his story. So he said, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna memorize my whole talk. I'm gonna memorize every word of it so I don't have to even look down at my notes one time today. So the audience is packed, just like it is today. The announcer gets up to introduce him, and his mind goes blank, completely blank. And he says, oh no, what am I gonna do? He can remember his one line. His one line is, behold, I come quickly. So he starts out with that one line, hoping that the rest will come back to him. Wait a minute, I'm tangled up in this cord. What? So he says, so he gets up to the stage and he says, behold, I come quickly. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. So he walks over to the right side of the stage and he says, behold, I come quickly. Nothing again. So he steps over to the left side of the stage, and with all his vigor and might, he says, behold, I come quickly, and throws himself off of the stage and lands in the lap of the oldest lady in the whole congregation. And he gets up and he says, oh, I am so sorry. I apologize. And she said, well, you told me you were coming 3 times. You would have thought I would have been more prepared. Isn't that funny? Oh, I love that. And so the talk I wrote today is so I brought notes, you'll be glad to know. The title I entitled today's talk is Dare to Believe. Dare to believe. There was a time when I was 18 years old. Who remembers back when they were 18? Not too many. I don't remember too well, but way back then, and I won't even tell y'all how many years ago that was, okay? And I thought I held the world in the palm of my hands. My family would tell you that I had confidence oozing from every pore in my body. When I graduated from high school, of course, I got accepted into the college I wanted to go to. There was no other choice. I was gonna be a Georgia Bulldog for whatever the cost. And I realize I'm probably speaking to some Florida Gators, so don't hold it against me, okay? And I even had the gall to turn down not just one, but 2 tennis scholarships that I was placed in my lap to 2 smaller schools because I wanted to go where all my friends were going. And I was actually 1 week away from walking on to the University of Georgia women's tennis team, which they were ranked in the top 5 of the nation at that time. I had been working out with the team. I had 2 of the 3 coaches tell me, Kelly, you're gonna make it. You're gonna make it. Well, my best friend and I were home for a weekend. My parents lived right outside of Atlanta. And she had come over to get me at the early time of probably 11:30 or 12 o'clock. That 11:30 is still the morning, so I better just stop it at 11:30 on that Saturday morning to drag me out of bed and say, come on, Kelly, we gotta go. We gotta go to Cumberland Mall where we're gonna get your new outfits for the tryouts. Come on, they're waiting on us. So I'm not a morning person, never have been, never will be. So I dragged myself out of bed and we got in the car. Mind you, my mother had told me that night before, Kelly, make sure you don't go anywhere tomorrow because I am going to take you shopping for your new outfits. My mother got home 15 minutes too late. We were cruising down the road, not even a mile away from where my parents lived, trying to sneak through the end of a yellow light, going up to, if the stoplight is right here, we were going up and taking a left-hand turn onto a road that curved around and went straight through that light. And we just happened to be at the wrong place at the wrong time. And there was a flatbed semi-truck carrying a full load of cement cylinder blocks on its back and did not even touch his brakes. It turned out that the driver of this truck had already been given 3 DUIs, that's driving under the influence, and it turned out that there was a warrant out for his arrest from the state of Alabama. But this was way before the age of computers, so nobody did the background checks like they should have, and it just happened. Full force, and I'm sure we were not going slow because remember, we were on our way to get to that mall where there were probably some, what do they call them, BOYS, boys there too. I'm sure that was on our mind too. But we hit the truck pretty much head on, the hardest on my best friend's side of the car. I was thrown straight through the windshield, and this was even before the age of really seatbelts. This was in 1985. So most people didn't wear them, and I was thrown straight through the windshield and took the brunt of the impact with my face into the grill of the truck. Shattered every single bone in my whole entire face. And if you get up close, you can see that there has been no sight in my right eye for over 34 years now. And the sight in my left eye, due to the brain injury, the traumatic brain injury, which was and is today my primary disability. The actual part of that operates your brain, we've got some doctors in this room, and they'll tell you it is actually located at the base of the back of your brain. But they compare a brain when it's hit at that kind of impact to a bowl of Jell-O. And when the frontal lobe, I've struggled with frontal lobe injury for so many years, and then it goes against the back of the skull, then the side. So that's why I've been working with people with traumatic and brain injuries for over 34 years now, and I've never met one exactly like another. That organ, the brain, is the most complicated. But I also broke some ribs, but I had a blood clot lodged in my brain. Let me see. And excuse me, but I'm going to blame this on my husband. He's been dieting lately, and he ate all of our grapefruits from our refrigerator. But all I had was a humongous orange to bring today. So if you can make this a little bigger than what it probably was about twice as big, lodged inside my brain. When my parents arrived at the hospital, and mind you, I hope you all will every one of you all will want a copy of the book today, because there is so much more in the book than I could ever say up here. But God, when the neurosurgeon came into the waiting room where my mother and father were, as you can imagine, this would have to be a parent's worst nightmare. And the receptionist nodded over towards my parents, and mind you, it was like an eternity waiting for that doctor. And he brought them into a private room, and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I have been doing this work for 21 years, and I have never seen a traumatic brain injury as severe as your daughter's." He said, "Time is of the essence. We know that the vision in her right eye is completely gone. We think that there's been damage to the left eye too, but we won't know until we get in there. In my left eye, I've lost my total peripheral vision." So looking right back at Kathy, sitting in the green shirt back there, the lady right in front of me, I hope her name's Kathy. I can't see my hand right in front of my face. I've lost vision from here over. So if any of y'all see me driving that golf cart around, I would warn you, step out of my way. But praise God, he left me with a window, which I thank God for every day. But God, the doctor told my parents that, "I'm sorry, we're only giving her a 2 to 3% chance of survival. She is on a ventilator." And he let them know that that was the only thing keeping me alive. He told them, "We're going to let you in to see her for a very brief time, as time is of the essence. I want to warn you, her face is extremely swollen, and her face is completely swollen, and he said to them, say what you need to say, because more than likely this may be the last time you'll ever see her with blood running through her veins." Can you imagine being a mother or a father hearing that? And maybe some of you all in this room have heard those similar things, or it may have been a spouse. My parents were completely numb and in shock. My mother writes in her journal, And that's what the book is written from. My mother and father's journal that somebody had the wisdom to give them the night of the accident. And my mother said there was no amount of preparation that could have prepared us from the horror of seeing our daughter for that first time. And the doctor said, my mother was able to get out the words, "How long do you think the surgery will take?" And he said it could be 8 hours, it could be 10 hours. And my mother said, "Doctor, we don't care how long it takes, just as long as Kelly lives." With tears streaming down their faces, they let the doctor go. That first night, I understand, prayers went out all across the country. People, they said that churches came together and cried out my name to the Lord, asking him to save my life. It was one of those, and that was probably the first night that my family everyone prayed together out loud. I wish I had all the answers. I wish I could tell you why he allowed me to live through that first night, and why so many of the people that I've worked with in the past will never have the kind of healing that I have had. But God, I wanted to ask, did anyone see Steve Harvey's last daytime show? By a raising of a hand, did anybody see Steve Harvey's final, before he went off the air? Well, he had one of my favorite speakers. His name is T.D. Jakes. Oh, I just heard from the front row. Oh, I love him. He just published a new book, which I'm going to be standing in line for. It's called Crushing. Crushing. And he talks about this fact. He said, you can either be dead, do you want to be buried, or do you want to be planted? Let me repeat that. He says, do you want to be buried, or do you want to be planted? The difference is, the dead are what? Buried. But seeds are planted. Seeds are planted and watered. And they go into the ground, into the dirty ground as these grungy old seeds. What comes out of the ground is always better than what went into it. And that's what I want to challenge everyone in here today. Do you want to be buried or planted? God can resurrect anything out of a negative situation and make you better than before. My Aunt Nan put it this way. She told me very early on when I'd just gotten out of the hospital. She said, Kelly, things like what has happened to you, and I'm sure if we went around the room, every one of us has a story. Things that have happened to us can either make us better or bitter. They can either make us better or bitter. The choice is up to us. Well, right there and then, right there, I made a decision that with my family's support, I was going to make my life better, doggone it. And I was not going to choose to be bitter, even though that would have been so easy, so much easier for me to do. I was just like an infant all over again, except I was this height. And believe me, learning how to walk again sure was a lot easier when I had a lot less ground to fall on. And if any of y'all have seen me at the tiki, if you see me go down, just say, oh, that's just Kelly. That's just Kelly up there dancing, because I lose my balance very easily these days. But you know what? I don't stay down. I don't stay down. I get up and I woo-hoo-hoo, start whooping and hollering again. My husband will tell you. Oh, that's good. And let me point out, my husband is in the back, and Howard Cain is who he is, and I would not be half of the lady I am today if it had not been for God bringing Howard into my life. Mind you, I had to pray a long time. I was 48 years old by the time I got married, but it was worth the wait. Okay, change page. But this book, A Stranger to Myself, this is not a book about me. Surprise? It is a story about how a whole family went on a journey. And I hate to tell, because I've got some of the people in they're founding members of our brand new support group for people that have a disability, especially people with brain injuries, but we're not turning away anybody. And healing from a brain injury is not like a broken arm, where they put it in a cast and 3 months later it's better than it was before. Healing from a brain injury is a lifelong process. And it can be challenging. I had to relearn my ABCs all over, relearn how to write again, which my husband will tell you, he never lets me write anything because he says it's chicken scratch. So, and had to learn how to read, had to learn my multiplication tables again. And had to learn how to crawl, how to stand, how to walk. I tell you what, it almost seems like I'm talking about a different person today, because I just can't believe where God has brought me from. And coming out of a coma, I was in a coma for 4 months. 4 months of my life are gone just like that. But there were different milestones in a coma. And at about 90 days, I was in Atlanta. It was beautiful springtime. The nurse had cleared out the room with my family to give me my tube feed and to change me. Tube feed at that time was fed through the nose. How good do you think that tasted? So, but she asked me that same old question that had been asked to me zillions of times by that time. Kelly, if you can hear me, lift your finger. And it had been 90 days, so by this time, they barely were even looking at the bed, because I hadn't done anything for all that time. But that day, it was a beautiful sunny afternoon. My right finger went up and came down. She did a double take and she said, Kelly, if that really was you, lift that same finger again. So I lifted it again and put it down. She got so excited, she threw down the tube feed, my whole entire lunch, and went running out the room, turned the corner, went running down the hallway to the waiting room where my family was always camped out, came bursting through the door and screams, "She lifted a finger! Kelly lifted a finger! She's alive! There's somebody in there!" And my mom said, this whole room erupted. The women were all crying. The men were doing high fives and whatever men do, body slams or whatever. And I'm hearing this story. This is probably 9-10 months later. And I'm like, wait a minute, Mom. Did you say I just got up and cited the Declaration of Independence? And she said, no, Kelly. And mind you, I'm still 18 years old at this time, or 19 by this time. And she said, you lifted a finger upon response. And I'm like, boy, you guys were really hard up, weren't you? But going back and working with that population, and my father's story is in the book that I don't think we'll get to today, but like I said, it's a teaser for y'all to buy a book. But you're never too old to dream. I want to end with this analogy. Do you know an arrow, when it's shot from a bow and arrow? Do you know that the further the arrow is pulled back, the further it goes, right? So those of us who have been through struggles and felt like we couldn't make it, felt like we couldn't do it, we're just being strained a little, because God's got places for us to go to. And we are going to get there. We are all going to get there. You're never too old to dream. Maybe some of you all need to think of some new dreams. Maybe some of us have had our dreams crashed into the sea or into a truck. But God, I believe, has new dreams for every person in here. Let's choose to dream. All right, thank you all for listening. I'm going to open it up to some questions.